All right, so we are now recording for the Southside Green Zone meeting on January 25th of 2021. I will start at the top for roll call. And Megan.
Present.
Thank you. Karen.
Here.
Thank you. Kosar.
Here.
Mahubo.
Here.
Thank you. Samara.
Here.
Amanda.
Here.
Jason.
Here.
Love the enthusiasm. Aticha.
Yes.
Wonderful. Zainab.
Here.
Nice. Cassandra joined. Cassandra, can you announce your presence? Perfect. Is Vivi with you tonight?
No, she should be joining here pretty soon, though.
Okay, great. Well, that does make quorum, so we can officially move forward. Samara, did you want me to do the adoption of the agenda in minutes or quickly, or just hand it over to you for that?
If you're cool with it, yeah.
Sure, we can do that quick. So hopefully folks have seen the agenda. I will drop the link into the chat here. We have a presentation from Michelle Shaw on the Edible Boulevard Garden pilot. We'll talk about narrowing down our focus areas and talk about meetings with Northside Green Zone and recruitment for the next 2-year cycle for the Southside Green Zone. And then there is the meeting minutes that are linked within the agenda from our December meeting. I will drop those in the chat too. And then, unless there are any changes to the agenda or the minutes, we just need a motion and a second, and then we can do a quick vote on both of those.
I'll make the motion to approve that. The agenda.
And the minutes?
And the minutes, yes.
Perfect.
And I'll second Samara's motion.
You. Any discussion, questions, amendments before we vote? All right, not hearing any, I will go through the roll call and just say yes if you approve or no if you don't. So I'll start with Cassandra.
Yes.
Perfect. Megan?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Kosar?
Yes.
Mahubo?
Yes.
Samara?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Aticha?
Can't really work out. Yes.
And Zainab. All right, so that is approved. I'm seeing that Joan just joined. Welcome, Joan. We literally just did roll call and adoption of the agenda. You haven't missed anything yet. And then I think Viviana just joined as well. So welcome to both of you. I'm going to hand it over to Samara.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. I'm just going to get us started with some introductions. So if everyone could just say your name, your pronouns if you want to, how you're affiliated with the Green Zone or what brings you here tonight, and then just the classic, how are you doing this evening in 1 to 3 words? Yeah, and then Kelly, if you're cool with going down the list and calling people out, that'd be cool.
Yeah, let's do it in alphabetical order now just to mix it up. So actually, Samara, you're going first.
Wow, cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Samara Adam. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. I'm a voting member on the Southside Green Zone Council, and tonight I am exhausted but happy. Yeah.
All right. Amanda, you're next.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi. Amanda Sadoff, she, her. I'm a non-voting business member and representing Abbott Northwestern Alliant Health. And I'm good for a Monday. Feeling good.
Nice. Let's do Cassandra.
My name's Cassandra Holmes, sorry. I live in Little Earth of United Tribes, grew up here, lived in East Phillips pretty much all of my life. Love the community, and just want to see that it still exists years from now, and that's why I'm on the green zone. And I am feeling, let me see here, like really busy but accomplished.
Nice. And Viviana, do you want to go next?
Yes. My name is Viviana, and I'm live here Little Air, and I'm a board member, active member, and I feel tired. I'm trying to make dinner, and that's it.
Well, thank you for being here. Eticha?
Yes, my name is Iticha. In profession, as I told you last time, I'm a journalist and I'm working for Atlanta Hertz. At the same time, I'm working with the MDH, Minnesota Department of Health, on COVID-19 on my media platform called Oromo Diaspora Media. So my day is wonderful.
Thank you. Jason?
Hi, my name is Jason Chavez Cruz. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a non-voting member of the council, and I currently live in the central neighborhood, but I was born and raised in the East Phillips neighborhood, so I really care about environment and housing, and love to give my input on the council with my experience on that. So, yeah, that's me.
How are you doing today?
Busy. I work at the legislature, so we've been getting busy and stuff. So it's fun, but a lot of workforce meetings in regards to like we had a big presentation today on like workforce, and the state demographer gave us like statistics, and it's very sad on how like our BIPOC communities are like the ones most impacted by the pandemic in regards to employment. So I guess sad, but also I guess hopeful for the work we're gonna do. So yeah.
Thanks for being here tonight. Joan, you're next.
Oh, good evening, everybody. I'm Joan Van Holla. I'm a 30-plus year resident of East Phillips. I live at 28th and 16th. And I'm feeling pretty crunchy tonight. I've had wall-to-wall meetings since 8:30, pretty much nonstop with a half hour off in the middle of it all. But I'm happy to be here, and I'm pretty much just in listening and learning mode because I'm new.
Thank you, Joan. And I'm going to run through our members first and then come back to guests. So I'll go to Karen next.
Hi, everybody. Karen Clark here, she, her, hers pronouns. Let's see, I've lived in East Phillips for more than 40 years, and 2 years ago retired from the legislature, and the privilege of representing my neighborhood and 4 others in the legislature. Now I spend most of my time volunteering for the Women's Environmental Institute, and that's how I'm bringing some of that to this meeting. And I'm a voting member, and I am happy to be here. I just appreciate the commitment of people that are here. And the other thing I really appreciate is a sunshine we had today.
Thank you, Karen. Megan?
I'm Megan Coles Dennis. I also live in East Phillips. And I, she, her pronouns. I think, am I a voting member now or am I a non-voting? Okay, got it. And then, so I apologize. I just couldn't log out of my work one. So that's why I'm not here representing the state by any means. And then, I am all right. I have very much appreciated the sun today as well, but I did not sleep as much this weekend as I should have also.
Thanks, Megan. And Kosar.
Similar to Megan, I will add the disclaimer. I am not representing the city of St. Paul on this call. It's just, I'm stuck utilizing Microsoft Teams. But my name is Kosar Mohammed. I am a Ward 6 resident. I was born and raised in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood, but now reside in Ventura Village. I'm also a voting member on this council. So what was the other question? How do we feel today? I'm exhausted. Yeah. I hope for the rest of the week to go a lot more positive than this Monday has.
Thanks for being here, Kosar. Zainab? Zainab, are you still on the call? You might be, you're muted. Okay, well, we'll come back to you. Hopefully you can hear us. All right, and then I think we had Mahubo on the phone.
Yes. Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Mahima Mohammed, pronouns she, her, hers. I live in Ward 6, and I'm a voting member. Today's been a good day. I mean, like Karen was saying, the sunshine was amazing, and I actually seen a bit of a rainbow, so it's a good start to a Monday for me.
Awesome. All right, and then we have a few guests on the phone. Allie?
Hi, everyone. My name is Allie Brown-Law, and I'm a student at Carleton College, south of the cities. And a few other students and I are working on our senior thesis about the green zones and environmental justice in Minneapolis. So we're very inspired by you guys and excited to be here. And yeah, I use she, her, hers pronouns. And today has felt structured but productive.
Awesome. And Maya?
Yeah, I reflect what Allie said. I'm Maya. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm also from Carleton. I'm busy but good and happy to be here learning about the green zones.
Thank you. And then Julia.
Hello, I'm Julia. I use she, her pronouns. Calling in from Minneapolis, and I am the new Promise Zone / Northern Green Zone AmeriCorps Vista person. But yeah, I'm excited to be here and see what's going on in the Southside.
And how are you doing today?
Oh gosh, I'm frazzled today.
This is the beginning of week 2 for Julia, so we've just been throwing everything at her. All right, and then I think someone else called in. Is that Shirley? maybe on mute. All right, well, we can come back to the most recent guest who joined us as soon as they can unmute, and then I'll do myself and then hand it back to Samara. So I'm Kelly Molman. I use she, her pronouns. I'm with the city of Minneapolis. I'm also a resident of Phillips West. And I'm doing pretty good today. It's my dog's 5th birthday, and we made him a little pizza and celebrated during my break right before this. So it's fun to have little things in life to keep you going.
Happy birthday.
Should we, was anyone on the phone who wasn't able to go? If you were able to unmute yourselves, you could go now. Oh, looks like someone just typed.
Yeah, Zainab just posted in the chat. So for those who cannot see the chat, Zainab says her name is Zainab. She's a she, her pronouns. She's in the Powderhorn neighborhood. She's excited to be here to join because she wants to inform her community, but also cares about housing. So thanks for being here, Zainab. Hopefully your audio works.
All right.
Presenters to introduce to?
Well, we're about to hand it over to you, Michelle. So.
Okay. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, Michelle, if you want, you could just go ahead and introduce yourself and then share
Can you give me 1 minute because my dogs are about to finish their food and I'm going to need to let them outside. Sorry.
Sure. No worries.
I'm like in between my meetings, and so it's like that precious 15 minutes that I have to get them fed. So yeah, give me 1 minute.
No worries.
Come on, guys.
All the animals.
Come on.
Amanda, did I see that you were holding an animal earlier?
Come on. Speckles, come on.
Who was that?
I saw Karen right here. I saw Karen Clark's gray cat in the background.
Huge.
Look at that booty. Looking
This is
like
our
Gizmo.
quarantine puppy.
Come.
Her office assistant.
Come on. We're going outside. Come on.
Do it.
Come. Go potty. Go potty. Go potty. Go potty. Go potty. Go potty. Go potty.
I was just wondering, are we recording this?
The all word, right? Mine is do your business.
So I am going to go ahead and start, and then hopefully you can hear me while I have to let them in. So hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Shaw. I live in Northeast Minneapolis. I just got on the Northern Green Zone officially. So I have been going to that for a little over a year, starting back in 2019. And I'm happy to be an official member. So I'm excited. And some of you, if you were on this, on the Southside Green Zone back in 2020, you might remember that I came and talked about the Edible Boulevards program when we were trying to get it going. So I wanted to come and give an update on what took place last year, because we did have a few gardens in the East Phillips neighborhood, and then on the north side too. So I apologize that things are a little discombobulated, but Cassie and Karen and I just came from an East Phillips Neighborhood Institute meeting. And I reminded Karen about this meeting, but I forgot that I was a part of this meeting. So here we are. But let's get to, I need to share. So let me figure this out because I am not a good Google Meets person. If I can figure out how to share the screen. So are you able to see my screen?
Yep.
Okay,
I
awesome.
think if you put it in the present mode, it should be all set.
Great.
Yep, looks good.
Okay. Yay. So edible boulevards, just going to be talking about the hopes and dreams of this initiative, essentially a city pilot that started back in 2020. So we wanted to change the ordinance in Minneapolis because right now you aren't allowed to grow fruits and vegetables on the boulevards. You can in St. Paul, but in Minneapolis you can't. So that's one of the main things that when I found out you couldn't do that, I met with my council member, Kevin Reich, and we talked about starting this pilot to see how that would work and try and get some gardens in some of our neighborhoods to see how that would work. Another thing, we wanted to increase food access in the green zones. We wanted to bring community together, have them involved in growing their own food. We also wanted to be intentional about the produce that's planted within each of the cultural communities. And another thing was have the city decrease salt use on the roads, because one of the things that I was hearing people say when I started talking about this edible boulevards piece was, but what about all the stuff in the soil? What about all the salt in the soil? And then also learn by doing. So those are really all of the hopes and dreams that came out of not just when I thought of, wow, wouldn't this be great to have, but also the conversations that I was having with both of the green zones and also the council member. And you'll see some of the partners here as I go through this. So these are the groups and people that were involved in the city pilot creation. Councilmember Reich, the Northside Green Zone. So it's part of our work plan up through 2025. The Southside Green Zone, when I came to talk with you last year, now you're all seeing my work partner. Oh, maybe you can see my dog Buddy. The Southside community member Rico Morales was a part of it originally. Jim Doughton, who is with Minneapolis Environmental Services, he continues to be a part of this. And then the sustainability department. Yeah, and Samara actually was at that first meeting, at the meeting we had back in March with the sustainability department too. So what did we do? We recruited participants in Jordan and East Phillips. So one neighborhood on the north side, one neighborhood on the south side. We acquired funding for soil tests, acquired funding for resources and also community expertise. We conducted pre-surveys and post-surveys and also home visits just to make sure, there were good spots for having these boulevard plots, where would be the best spots given sun, those kinds of things. Another step, you can see I kind of goofed up the steps here. We tested soil at each home site and waited for those test results before moving on, because if there was, let's say, too much lead or too much arsenic, clearly we wanted to have a mediation plan before moving forward with that. Another step was having, there was a McAllister professor that I got in touch with, and she was the person who interpreted all of the soil test results. So that was really helpful. In fact, her class then became a partner with us, and she is a soil professor at McAllister. So I went into her class in September and spoke with them about this. And then they created brochures about lead, about how to keep soil healthy, gardening with lead in the soil, all those kinds of things. And I'll show you one of those brochures in the next few slides here. But they were really great to partner with. And they also gave us some funding for doing the soil tests, which cost about $120 each. So that was great. We also prep participants for the gardening process. Also compensated urban ag groups to teach participants how to get their gardens from, sorry, I need to plug in my computer here, to go from the lawn to the garden, making sure, that we can get people to be self-sustainable, and then followed up with people with the post survey and asked for photos from everybody. So I tried to be at as many of the garden bills as possible. But yeah, it was just really fun to be a part of the whole thing. So here you can see actually one of them, the very first one that was done in East Phillips. The obstacles were, we had no funding at one point in time, COVID, of course, and lead. So, of course, I'm leaving out a whole bunch of things here that happened, but we didn't have any funding in early June. We were originally going to get soil testing funding from the city, but we ended up going to the county, and the Master Gardener program with Terry Straub, they were really generous and funded us for the soil testing and also for paying Growing North Minneapolis and Little Earth Farm in the two respective neighborhoods to go and teach people how to do what you're seeing here on their boulevard. So it was really great to be working with the county on that. And COVID, of course, made it difficult to go and recruit in person and to meet with potential partners. And also it required, us to create a safe process for having volunteers and for staff to go out, but we created that. And then lead, we're wanting to go for arsenic, to test for arsenic, which is why the soil test is so expensive, but I had no idea, and maybe all of you know this already, but I did not, that there was so much lead in the soil. And the city and the state seem to think, or maybe not necessarily the state, but the city and the county go with 100 as acceptable in Minnesota, 100 parts per million. And the federal government go with 300 to 400 parts per million being acceptable. And for me, I'd like to go as close to zero as possible. So for those between 0 and 100 parts per million of lead, but I put 25 here because everyone was between 25 and 100 parts per million. They were given the option of doing a raised bed or an in-ground one. And anyone over 100 automatically had to have a raised bed. 3 people dropped out as a result, and 2, I guess only one of those was in East Phillips, so that was good. But yeah, the lead, that was a huge finding that I had no idea was going to happen. And then here's one of those brochures I was telling you about. I'm really excited to have these as a resource to pass out to people this coming spring. And here's where a lot of the funding and donations came from. Most of it is local. And then here are even more of the partners. And I'm sure you might recognize some of these names too. Steve Dreyer was great from Ventura Village. He was helping us out at the plot that you were seeing in that picture a couple slides back. And of course, Chad at Little Earth Farm. He was a huge help in East Phillips, and Patsy Parker with Growing North Minneapolis. She was incredible too. So huge shout outs to those two. And then, let me go back here real quick. And let me know if I'm running out of time, Kelly, okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. And then here's what the donations and the funding were needed for. There was, the testing of everyone's soil before building the garden. As I said before, we paid one urban ag group on the north side and one on the south side, and that was for mentoring the participants with how to build their gardens. We had the donations of lumber, screws, soil, compost, and manure. Some of that came from Home Depot. We had Lowe's. We had Mother Earth Gardens. There were a whole bunch of local stores that donated all of that. We have plant and seed donations, which came from a number of individuals, and also a couple of companies that donated the seeds as well. Time and transportation of goods and soil tests. There were a lot of volunteers that were involved that came through MN 350. And then those of you who know Michael Cheney, there were some people from one of his lists that responded to my ask for help. So, and then time and help to build the garden beds, and time needed for reading the soil test results. So there was a lot of work put into this and a lot of people who made it all possible. And then here you can see the participants. So yeah, in fact, this young lady is celebrating her 21st birthday today, I saw on Facebook. So that's exciting. And here are a couple more. So these are on the north side. And the one on the right actually is in East Phillips. But watching this family that you see here build this raised bed was really fun. And that's what one of the things we're hoping to do this year is to recruit more families. And the grant that we just wrote to the state was to recruit families with youth, middle school youth, so that we can pay them so we can educate them about this and to do some of the things that Patsy and Chad were teaching the families, so that the youth can do that teaching throughout the summer to people. So, and do some work and get paid for it. So crossing our fingers that that gets funded, and also hoping to write a couple more grants in case that one doesn't get funded and we can get funding another way. So just a couple things from the surveys, pre and post. Knowing what we now know about having lead levels of 35 to 135 parts per million in 3 of our neighborhoods, what do you think we should recommend about the ordinance change to include fruits and vegetables? And you can see there was a tie here between moving forward with changing the ordinance by educating people about safe gardening practices when there's lead in the soil, and committing city funding and the staff intern to a second summer of this city pilot. So those were the two main things that we had a total of 9 people that were a part of the program this past year. And then on a scale of 1 to 5, how much do you know about transforming a lawn into a garden? So you can see we started out with 12 people, but everybody moved to the right. So we're happy about that. And then here's how the goals changed. And you can see that the amendment of the city ordinance, at least in my opinion, moved down to the very bottom. And as some of you may know, back when this first started, I believe that hunger was one out of 8 people were hungry. And today I believe that's 1 out of 4. So providing access to fresh produce to anyone who needs it is absolutely, it's a huge necessity. And so that's why I have the question here, how much has hunger in America changed in 2 years? And it's a huge, huge change. So that's something I think we all really need to be taking a look at. And that was one of the main reasons that I have wanted to do this program to begin with. But yeah, the city ordinance definitely, to me, is important still. But number 1, I believe, is the fresh produce and making sure that we are feeding people. Number 2, teaching participants gardening skills they can use for self-sustainability and to mentor others. Another thing is partnering with urban ag nonprofits on the north side and south side to educate community members and create youth mentorships. Another goal, which is new, identify ways to safely garden with lead in the soil. Another goal, explore possible bioremediators for lead. Another one that is not new is learn by doing, and then lead to the amendment of city ordinance. So some of them are the same and some are new because we learned by doing as we went through the project. And then these are some future goals that I have as a facilitator and for the group. Have more participants who are Native, Latinx, Black, and people from communities of color, to invite people to the table now who are from these communities to work on growing the project, to also work on grant writing with folks from both green zones. Another thing is to continue to build relationships with people in both neighborhoods. I also want to continue to support past participants through planting resources, volunteers, and possible staff time. And all those things are written into the grant that Growing North Minneapolis, Project Sweetie Pie, Spark Y, and Tiny Fields just turned in. And then also have a plan in place for lead. Another thing is to move towards the city ordinance amendment. And also I am hoping to be working with someone at the park board to allow a pilot of some sort so that we can grow certain fruit trees on our boulevards. Because again, in St. Paul, they can do that, but in Minneapolis, we can't. So I'm crossing my fingers on that. I have a contact person, but we haven't been able to connect yet. So my question is, and you can definitely have time to think about this, but is there anyone who might be interested in doing some planning for edible boulevards from the green zone? And do you have any questions?
Thank you for sharing, first of all, Michelle. It was really cool to hear an update on all of the work that you had done. I personally would definitely be interested in being more involved with that again. Yeah.
See, Joan has her hand up. Go ahead, Joan.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, how do people get tested for lead? How do kids get tested for lead in our neighborhood, not of people? Because I think it's always good when we do with things, which is awesome. This is awesome work, but how do we remember, keep the people in the center of the story too? So, does anybody know? Maybe Karen knows. Where do people go to get tested for lead, and how available is that information for people in East Phillips? And do we know the source? Is it really from old paint on houses? Is it from the foundry on 28th?
I could, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Great questions, Joan. This is Karen. How people get tested, how children get tested, it's usually a part of pre-school testing, but actually it's usually a part of very young child testing. It used to be overlooked by pediatricians, but now it's understood to be much more important. And we understand that childhood lead poisoning is basically a toddler's disease because it happens very early in life when those little ones are crawling around and putting their hands in their mouth from floors that have lead dust from paint, mostly inside the house. But we also know that lead in the soil is a source. And there have been studies in the past that have showed us, particularly where there's a lot of traffic, the lead that came out of cars when it was legal to have lead in the gasoline, deposited all over our yards. And that's one of the reasons why what Michelle is doing with testing on the lead in the boulevards is really important, because that's right next to the street. And the lead that came out of cars when gasoline could have lead in it, deposited right there, and then also up into the yards further and further. As you get close to the house, especially in neighborhoods like ours where we have lots of older homes, the paint, again, it was legal to have lead in paint. This is a big public health story that happened years ago. Sometime we could talk about it, but there was a fight to stop putting lead in paint and lead in gasoline by the public health authorities at the time, and they lost. The paint companies and the oil companies won. And so those two sources are still the main sources, although in some industrial areas, there's lead that comes out of, some of the industries too. I don't know if I answered your question, but, if people are worried about having their child or even themselves as an adult tested, that's something that should be done by their healthcare provider. And again, here we run into the problem of disparities, a lot of racial disparities and income disparities, because if you don't have insurance, you may not be able to get that, or if you're low income. Although children's health clinics now, some of the care that's available free of charge to some of our families does pay for it, but it has to, then they have to figure out what to do to get the lead out of the little one. And I could just tell you from my years of being a public health nurse, where I went and talked to parents, mostly on the west side of St. Paul, about the lead that was in their child's blood when it was tested. What we taught them was the main way to get it out is by the food that they eat. And so it brings us right back to what Michelle and what those of us who care about urban agriculture know, which is the lead that's in the blood. If it's really serious, they're going to try to pull it out with chemicals, but that's very dangerous actually. And it's better if it can come out with having those little ones eat foods that are high in iron and calcium. And so that's the green leafy vegetables that we can grow. And it's one of the good reasons for helping communities have urban farms where we have so much lead poisoning, because then we can grow our own low cost green foods that will help those little ones, their own body throw it out. And it does work. It's amazing. I don't know. That was a quick review of like several decades of work there. And
Can I just ask one more question? Do we have any data on how many kids have elevated blood lead levels in East Phillips or in the Southside Green Zone? And then I'll be quiet.
Yes, we do. Yeah. And the city, the Minneapolis Health Department does have a Lead in Healthy Homes program. So if we'd like to have a future presentation on that, I could invite the manager, Lisa Smestad, to come, and she can come with all of the maps and the data that they have. They know what neighborhoods have the highest blood lead level tests for children, all the resources on where you can, they do a lot of free testing events, a lot more previous to COVID. And they partner with the Hennepin County and the Letty Eddy Van. So yeah, lots more around that. Any other questions for Michelle? I know she has to jump to another meeting.
Well, Michelle, what's the best way for us to get in contact with you?
Yeah, I was going to say, if anyone is interested, you are more than welcome to contact Kelly. But you can also contact me directly, and that would be Michelle with 2 L's at mn350.org. Otherwise, my other email is a little trickier, but Kelly could maybe send that out. So Kelly, would that work?
Yep, happy to. So folks, you can either contact me or Michelle at michelle350.org at 350.org.
Awesome.
And also, Michelle, if you wanted to drop your contact information in the chat too, that way people can just grab it quick.
Okay, I will definitely do that. And I greatly appreciate you letting me come and spend this time with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Someone's on mute. Are they supposed to be?
I think next up is COSAR is going to take us into a conversation around narrowing down focus areas.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kelly. So from our last conversation that we had when we all connected, we were trying to figure out, what is going to happen with our budget, and as well as how are we going to move forward with the focus areas based off of our survey results. So we all took a survey, I believe, in November, and Kelly was able to provide us with those results, and folks had categorized the various different Southside Green Zone goals that they would like to focus on. The priorities that we received, I think, in that October survey, and the survey responses in order were green zone development criteria. So folks had indicated that they're really interested in figuring out how to develop a green zone development criteria that, resembles our thoughts, our community's thoughts around what development should look like in Southside Green Zones. The second piece was around air pollution. So folks have prioritized that as well as something that they would like to focus on. Housing and development also was another element. And then the Hiawatha campus and Roof Depot, which Karen and other folks and Cassandra have reiterated throughout our conversations as being the priority for folks in the East Phillips neighborhood, has also shown up as a priority in our survey as well. So based off of that conversation, we were wondering, and what is the role of the Southside Green Zones in development? How do we view ourselves in those conversations? How do we show up in those spaces, and how do we get involved? And how does this look besides a development criteria? So if we were to do future engagement with community about this conversation, how would that look within our COVID-19 environment? So I guess I'll leave it to folks to maybe think about that and maybe provide an opportunity for folks to answer as well. And just trying to get your general thoughts around if the Southside Green Zones members were interested in developing a criteria for development within the city, what would that look like and how would we get started? During our last conversation, folks had indicated that they would be interested on working on developing criteria with the Northside Green Zones and joining in on those meetings. So I think folks would consolidate, like a couple folks from our group, a couple folks from the Northside Green Zones, and then coming together as a smaller cohort to maybe develop a criteria that is resembling of both areas. So that's just to provide a little bit more background on what I'm speaking to.
Yeah, and if I can just build off of that, I know there's been 4 Southside Green Zone members who indicated interest in being on that working group with Northside to finalize the development criteria that they had initially drafted. And I am just waiting to confirm which Northside Green Zone members want to be part of that group. Roxanne O'Brien has indicated interest, and I'm trying to get maybe a couple more folks, and then I'll get those scheduled. So for those who are kind of waiting to hear for what the next steps were, that's where that is at, and appreciate your patience as we get that rolling. And I wonder, Kosar, you've shown interest in development, and one of the reasons we had a couple folks from the city's housing team, Katie Topinka and Roxanne Kimball, come in the fall to talk about the city's housing program, was because of this interest in housing development and what resources are there available, or what programs are out there for increasing the amount of housing in the community. We've had presentations on homelessness and addressing or providing resources for individuals who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness. Indigenous Peoples Task Force and American Indian CDC both came in the fall to speak with us. So we've had, a couple presentations on some of the things that are happening either at the city level or at the community level. And so part of this conversation is a question that I'm posing to all of you, and hoping to have a discussion around it, because, I don't have the answer necessarily about what role you all want to play in some of these topics. So we can go, just as an example, I think there's a few different directions just off the top of my head. And one is, to keep bringing more people in for presentations and use this as a learning opportunity. So that's one. And then I think the idea would be, so then what do we do with that learning? How do we share that with the community? I think, that was Kosar kind of mentioned that as well, when there's future engagement with the community around these topics. Another area would be to kind of sorry, I almost left my train of thought, to have, instead of just educational presentations, invite folks from different city offices to come when they have a particular initiative in the community coming up where they want Green Zone's input and feedback on it. So for example, while it's not a top priority in this prioritization exercise, there are going to be some transportation projects happening in the community, and there's some engagement activities over the next year in 2021. So we could invite folks from Public Works to come and get feedback from the Southside Green Zone on those projects that are happening within the community. I know Alina Abbott Northwestern is doing a couple projects. One is around a transportation hub. We could have them come and talk about that. There's any number, like the Sustainability Office has a couple different policies that we're looking at. One is around having energy cost disclosed to potential renters when they're looking to rent a property. That's something that is actually mentioned in our work plan as a policy that we want to stay on top of. And we anticipate maybe sometime around April or May being ready to come have conversations and really get a sense of whether that information would be helpful to community members who are looking to rent or are currently renting, and also how do we avoid any unintended consequences that we haven't even thought of? Like, how do we make sure that this policy is implemented in a way that's helpful and not harmful? So those are kind of like a couple different things that, are ways that other advisory committees are often used, but the green zones itself is a little different. So I want to hear if there are other ways that anyone on this group wants to use your time together to advance these issues that are very important.
And if it's a lot easier for folks, maybe because it's 7 p.m., it's winter, so a lot of folks don't want to engage in larger dialogue. If it is a lot easier to maybe do this via survey to get some of your feedback, I would be more than open to going through that and transcribing it back. I know one of the pieces that I also brought up to Kelly and Samara during our planning calls prior to developing the agenda is, we're also meeting up. I think we're at the budget line of we're almost done with the grant that we received. So maybe utilizing some of our focus areas to really get some work done and start pitching proposals to different philanthropy organizations and, trying to maybe build a robust budget so we can do really great community engagement and really incentivize a lot of the work that I know a lot of us are doing in community, and maybe get more volunteers to be paid for their time in participating. So that's just some of the initial thoughts, but I know folks are really busy right now and probably exhausted. So if you're not, comfortable or really up for sharing much during this call, I think Kelly, myself, and Samara can develop maybe a quick Google form to get people's feedback. And I see Karen has her hand up.
I do. Am I unmuted? Let's see.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm just going to say one of the things I would like, this council has done some fabulous work by outlining various issues. We really came up with a number of different actions and activities. And then we sent a couple of resolutions as well to the city council. One of the things that I'm wondering about is how can we get some direct feedback from some of the council? Because, I can think of 2 resolutions for which, Kelly does her best to take them forward, but if they don't respond to us, it's kind of like, why are we advising them? Or do they care about our advice? So I guess in some ways I'd like to see if there's a way that we can have more direct feedback. Maybe some of the council members could actually show up at a meeting. We have had that in the past, but not since the very beginning. Do you know what I'm saying? It's
yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. And I think that's one of the pieces that we discussed during our planning meeting, and it might be in this agenda or it might not, Kelly. But I know even with our larger group, Kelly might have informed us that, Ward 9 policy aides and Ward 6 policy aides, we need to maybe schedule time with them in February or March to touch base. I just think that there maybe needs to be more thought put into, what we're presenting and what we're going to propose and prepare in that time as well. So I think there's just a couple of things we need to organize, and maybe we can create a separate group that meets outside of our monthly meetings to prepare for that discussion.
I also see that there's a couple comments in the chat. So Joan said would like it if cumulative impacts could be considered in all new development through the framework of social determinants of health. Yes, absolutely. And Joan, I believe you are one of the folks who volunteered for the working group on the development criteria. So that is in there, and you can make sure that the language is strong. And then I see Amanda has also posted that her colleagues at Abbott Northwestern would be would love to give a presentation on the transportation hub and central utility plant project that they have going on there.
Yeah, that's one thing I was kind of gonna comment on too is, Kelly, you mentioned us providing more feedback to groups who are interested in it, and I think that's just really important. If there are projects or things that are already being done, yeah, that are already going to happen regardless, I think it's important for us to give our feedback on it, especially if groups are seeking us out or interested in communicating or hearing from us. So I think that would be an important thing to prioritize.
Kelly, this is Amanda. I'll reach out to you after this meeting to just talk about what that might look like and how we could get that scheduled.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm. And then another piece that I think I wanted to touch on before the end of this meeting is to really gauge folks' interest and availability on the joint quarterly meetings with the Northside Green Zones. So if folks are comfortable with adding in the chat, if they would like to join those quarterly meetings with the Northside Green Zones, or if this is something that, you know, the Southside Green Zones wants to embark on moving forward, I think maybe this would be a moment to figure that out. I know I was interested in joining the quarterly meetings with the Northside Green Zones. Samara, did you also indicate interest as well?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how many other folks on this call were interested in joining those calls. And then I see Megan said definitely interested in joining the quarterly meeting with the Northside Green Zones.
Yeah, and I think what I had was meeting with Samara and Kosar to plan for this agenda. One of the things that I had mentioned is just as a solo staff person managing both the Northside and Southside advisory bodies, what would be easier for me, instead of adding another meeting, would be having those meetings, those quarterly joint meetings, replace one of the Southside Green Zone and one of the Northside Green Zone meetings. So then it's also not adding another meeting to your schedules as well. I know many folks mentioned how busy they were after all of their Zoom meetings already during the day. And so the Southside, one way we could do this is the Southside Green Zone, you all meet the last Monday of the month. The Northside Green Zone, they currently meet the first Thursday, but that's going to be moving to the first Tuesday. So all of your meetings are within a week of each other. And so one thing that we could do is basically kind of, if folks are available on that first Tuesday, we could just kind of hop on to the timeline that the Northside Green Zone has, with the exception of, I think it's like the first Tuesday in July would be the second quarterly meeting. And so we could do that there's like a fifth Tuesday in June. And so we could just move that back, and it would be basically one night different than when the Southside Green Zone meeting would be. And so just have those. So it'd basically be the March meeting, the June or July meeting, the September, and then the December meeting would just shift about 1 week to match up with Northside Green Zone. So if folks are interested in that, that's one way we can do it, but we don't have to do it that way. You could add an extra meeting if you wanted to, but just know that there, like the development criteria, there are also opportunities to have more working groups and like outside of these larger meetings. So it's sort of like a pick your own adventure. We just want to make sure that everyone is supported in contributing what they want to this initiative.
Oh, Karen. Yeah.
I think you just provided a door. I was trying to figure out, Kelly, you said there could be other working groups. I would like to propose a working group, and will this be several months probably, to look at legislation that would enact some of the things we've been talking about here, everything from the environmental justice issues, and I know when Joan mentioned having cumulative impact in more neighborhoods, there's actually a couple of bills to look at that right now. And then the homelessness and what's going on with the roof depot. And I'm just thinking there's legislation in each of those areas. And if anybody would like to work on that, I would volunteer to be one of the people who could help move that along a bit. It'll just be, we have to do it soon because the legislature has a budget that they're already looking at, and some of these things cost money. So is anybody else interested in that and having the priorities that we've talked about get some state support through legislation?
I would love to see a working group work out here, and I would be interested in joining.
Yay. Great, Samara. Maybe we could let Kelly know, huh? Anybody who's interested?
Yeah, I'm interested as well. Karen, this is Kosar. So you can definitely put me down as well, Kelly. So I'm assuming that there are definitely folks interested to have quarterly meetings with the Northside Green Zones. And for the basis of this capacity, we'll remove one of those meetings for both of the groups, I'm assuming, on whatever month they might land on. And then I guess Samara, maybe you can take on announcing what spring recruitment looks like for the next 2-year appointment process.
Yeah, so that's one of our last things on the agenda, is just a reminder that our 2-year appointment is coming to a close. And so I believe, is it April, Kelly, that we will have to reapply again if you are interested in being here for another 2 more years. So, and we also still have there are still some seats that are open as well. So for both youth ambassadors and non-youth ambassadors. So starting to keep people in mind for that as well is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to mention that applying for those who are all on this call and interested, which I hope all of you are, particularly our new folks who just joined in December to fill the gap that we have. It's reapplying is as simple as taking your past application and just resending it to the city clerk's office. If you want me to either do that on your behalf or just send you the application for you to send in, I have the PDFs of all of your applications and am happy to do that for you to make this as easy as possible. Again, particularly for those who just applied to join. We know it's kind of a silly administrative check there, but yeah, as Samara mentioned, there are still 2 to 3 openings on for youth ambassadors. I think, high school, recent high school graduates up to the mid 20s is definitely still youth in my book. So that age range, I think there's a lot of young people who are getting very involved in this work. And then we also still have some openings for non-youth or full adult members, however you want to, regular members. who also live in the Southside Green Zone. We've had a number of folks who are interested who live just outside the boundary, but we only have those 4 non-voting seats for folks who live outside of the Southside Green Zone. So any help that folks in this group can provide in just reaching out to 1 or 2 people you know who live in the community to do some recruitment. I recently met with the new staff person from Phillips West, and so I think we might be able to kind of meet with their community meeting in February or March, to let them know and give a little presentation on what the Green Zone has been up to. Phillips West and Midtown Phillips have been the 2 areas where we have had the fewest Green Zone members to date. And I'm wondering, for any of the folks who've been kind of quiet on the call today, if you have any questions or feedback or any contributions you want to make. We're actually running quite ahead of time, so we might even end early.
I'm okay.
Thanks, Viv.
Sorry, it's me again. I had one thing that came my way via an email from the EPA that they're starting up a series of systemic racism speaker series. So it's nice to see the federal government reflecting the change in leadership, and I forwarded it to Kelly. So Kelly, maybe would you be willing to send it on to everybody?
Yes. Yep. Thanks for bringing that up.
And it's worthwhile to sign up for that EPA EJ mailing. That's all.
Yeah, thanks, Joan. Yeah, and I know during the last joint meeting with the Northside Green Zone, we heard a little bit about the Hennepin County Climate Action Plan. I just got an email about that, which I know Joan could speak to much in greater detail, but they're hoping to have their draft plan available in February for public comment. So that's something that I will also send out as soon as it's available for folks, if anyone wants to comment on it. And then I had also gotten an email from the state about their latest greenhouse gas emission report to the legislature. There was actually an interesting article about it, I think in the Star Tribune within the last couple days, where basically the state is not anywhere near reaching the goals that it has set, and mostly due to energy use, mostly gas use for heating in buildings and our transportation sector and the statewide agriculture sector. So if anyone's interested, I can also share the links to that information. Karen, go ahead.
There. Okay. I had a conversation with you, Kelly, a week or so ago about trying to find out what the response to our last resolution that we sent forward to the city council is, and I don't know if you've had a chance to follow up on that. Can you tell me what they said, just to review with people what it was? It was to say that we wanted the city to invest in supporting the legislation that we've had in the past and bring it forward again to allow us to change the state law so that rezoning could happen for Smith Foundry and bituminous roadways. And because they had said they were too busy doing other things that they couldn't put that on their agenda, and we asked them at in this meeting to prioritize that. So I don't know if you had a chance to check with them on that yet.
Yeah, I texted one of the staff on Friday just to remind them again, because they were going to set up a meeting with myself and my supervisor to talk about like strategy for that. And like the short version is, it's not that they're necessarily against the policy idea by any means, or that they couldn't put at least some time towards it. But the bigger issue is they are worried that bringing it up in a very explicit way would actually make it worse for the city to get either the policy done or to get other things on the city's agenda done. The legislature is not looking very favorably at the city of Minneapolis and some of the more progressive things that the city wants to do. And so they're doing a lot right now to fend off attacks. And so they want to have a strategy conversation around like, how can we approach this issue? How can we get the outcome that we're looking for without raising all the wrong flags with the wrong people? I also wonder, I mean, like, is Jason still with us? He might have stepped out. That might be a good conversation for us to have. You know, Jason works at the legislature now. Karen, with your experience in the past, maybe that's something that we can even talk about within one of our next Southside Green Zone meetings, or we've got half an hour now. We could talk a little bit about the strategy if anyone here is familiar with how the legislature works. Or we also mentioned earlier in the call having conversations with our city council members. And so if we wanted to invite Osman and Kano in for a conversation about that, and I think there's a few different ways that we can approach it.
Well, I can volunteer a little bit of history here. Probably should. For those, especially for the new members, may not know, but just to review for all of us, this is legislation that would give the city accountability on why they have not done anything to really deal with nothing. Let me just say nothing effective to deal with what's going on with the pollution that we live with in East Phillips. And if it's not a priority for the city as a whole, that's too darn bad, because they received documentation from the Minnesota Department of Health. I think it was in August or September, that the disproportionate air pollution, toxic air pollution in East Phillips is really serious as compared to the rest of the city. And, you know, we'll never get to the top of that list to get this law changed if we just rely on them kind of trying to figure out if they're going to lose something else somewhere. And I can tell you that this is actually an excuse I don't buy, because was it maybe 3 years ago, they actually came and opposed legislation that I and Senator Hayden had that would have said the city, that would have said the state will change the law and give the responsibility back to the city to decide the zoning for those two polluting industries. They opposed it. They sent their lobbyist, Jean Ranieri, to speak against it. So it's not just too believable that it's not only not that important to them, it should be very important to them. The kind of health damage that happens to people in our community is directly related to industrial pollution and to traffic pollution. And both of those things are serious. It causes people to have very serious health problems. It's caused some people to lose their life. So I just really don't buy that the city will just kind of somehow not bring this up because they're afraid that it'll hurt other parts of their agenda. Too bad. This should be on their agenda. You can tell I'm a lot of feeling about this, because I know the people that have died. I know people that have asthma. I know, we have people on this call who could speak to that. So I guess I just want to say, I think we need to stand up strong to the city and say, you need to make this a priority. And I can tell you, I have a little bit of experience, 38 years of working in the legislature, passing things for our city when the Republicans were in control. It has to do with a bunch of things, including relationships between legislators and each other. You have to be able to work across party lines. So the city has to have the commitment, and they don't, to this issue. And that's what I think we're hearing back. And Kelly, I'm sorry you have to be the messenger, because it's not your fault at all. You're just reporting what you're hearing. But I think that a lot of the people in the Southside Green Zone feel pretty strongly about this. It was one of our priorities. We sent 2 different resolutions to the city council. I was referring to that earlier. with no real basic response. And I don't think it's just a matter of talking to a couple of city council members. I think it's we do need to, of course, have the support of some city council members, but I think this organization or this, advisory board really needs to have our advice taken seriously. And I'll just leave it at that. I hope that we can make some progress. And the legislative session doesn't last forever, so I'm glad you gave us a little time to bring this up right now.
Say, Karen, can you send us is there some kind of history about this conversation? Yeah. Is there a summary that we can look at? Is there, I don't really understand everything you just said.
I know, thank you, Joan. The legislation is a little bit complicated in language, but I'd be glad to write a paragraph or two that just explains it, and I can send you the actual legislation that was opposed by the city. Yes, I could do that. If you give me a few days this week, I'll put it together. And Kelly, can I send it to you, and you can send it out to our members?
Yep. Yeah, and I think I've seen a document before, and it might be from the Minnesota League of Cities about just the issue of amortization. And I think it mentions there's a couple states in the country that allow it, but it is a fairly rare tool that is currently allowed for particularly pollution. And so that I think that explains a little bit more about what it is. And then, Karen's bill gives the language for what we're looking for.
Amortization usually sounds like we're talking about mortgages. This has nothing to do with mortgages. It's a funny word to apply to air pollution, but that's I shouldn't say air pollution, to zoning, but that's what it is. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You go, Karen.
Who said that? Oh, Cassie. Yeah. Thanks.
Well, Kelly, do you have any other announcements, or do you think we're moving towards ending this meeting a little early?
I don't have anything else.
Cool. I guess I just want to make sure that I'm on the same page as everyone. From what I saw in the chat and heard, it seems like people are interested in quarterly meetings with the Northside Green Zone, and on those months not having our normal Southside Green Zone meeting. Does that seem to align with what everyone's interested in?
Yes. I would just say I wonder about if we can make sure to talk, it's going to feel really far in advance, but if we can talk at the previous month's meeting, so February, I guess, to talk about what we'll talk about at the April quarterly meeting, just so that our leadership can go forward, kind of bringing what we might. That being said, I don't have any ideas, but I was just realizing if we want to have input into what we talk about and things, that we would probably need to do that the prior month. So.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. That's a really good point.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And also to continue to iterate on what's the best use for those joint meetings. Do we want those times to be when there's a presentation and discussion around an issue that's affecting both of the green zones, or should it be more just like focused on like deep dive discussions of the two green zone bodies coming together on particular issues.
That's where I guess I do have some input on. I think we should keep it like that time for us. Like, I don't know, make other people come to 2 meetings, I guess, and you know, as they might want to just come to that. But I think we really need to hold that time really really important for us to grow to as like a collective body or collective group. So I think personally, I think that's important.
That's super helpful, Megan. And I think if anyone, Megan and others, have ideas on like what, not only the topic, but like how we approach that topic, because for the time being, we are going to continue to be virtual like this. So maybe we want to take more, like do a more thorough icebreaker or something, or like I have the ability now with Microsoft Teams to do breakout rooms. So we could test out breaking out into, you know, groups of 5 or 6 where you could really get into a topic with folks. So yeah, I think that's great if we can talk at our next meeting about some ideas for that.
I like those ideas. I think breakout rooms too are an underrated tool that I have also kind of been like, you know, this is a small enough group, we're fine. But I think people feel more free to probably open up and more engaged with just a smaller group of people too. I know I would be personally. Sorry, tired this evening.
We could even play with them at our next Southside Green Zone meeting.
And then Kosar, if you're still here, just to check, maybe you and I could communicate about putting together a survey to continue to move towards focusing on our goals.
Yeah, let's definitely connect off of here and then schedule time to develop that.
Cool.
I'm not sure if folks have any other announcements, but if not, I think we can adjourn the meeting, right? I guess we have to end up meeting. Cassandra.
Did we need a motion to adjourn or anything? Or is that beyond us? I hope. I'm not super familiar with Robert's Rule stuff.
We don't officially have to go by Robert's rules as an advisory board. So yes, if everyone's ready to adjourn, we can just say we're adjourning. We got a thumbs up, several waving. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
All right.
So thanks for being here, everybody.
Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kelly.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.